Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and this channel's all about running, well, great one-shot adventures, but also short campaigns. And today I'm going to review a recent adventure for Vaesen, the 19th century horror RPG that pits players against old folklore, superstition, and traditions that clash against the coming modern world. The adventure? A Treaty of Blood. An adventure that takes place in a remote village located far away in the Carpathian Mountains. Carpathian Mountains, you say? Why, yes, this adventure takes place in Transylvania. And here the investigators are sent to dispatch a creature that is running rampant, killing people every week, and the lord of the land, King Vlad, desperately needs the players' help. Or does he? He is, after all, a guy named Vlad who lives in Transylvania. But is this all as obvious as it seems? It's not, but stay tuned to find out why. But be warned, there are spoilers ahead, because not only am I going to give you a full review of A Treaty of Blood, but I'll also give you Game Masters some tips and tricks on how to run this horror adventure like a pro. A Treaty of Blood is written by Sviatoslav Demchenko, Alexander Lazarenko, and Bohdan Mokriev. Apologies if I butchered those names. You can find this adventure in Vaesen's Mythic Carpathia supplement, which takes players outside of the traditional Nordic lands and into Eastern Europe, where the traditions and mythology are very different. It's a great supplement, by the way, which includes new Vaesen for players to face, new character options, and new adventures, but today I'm mostly focusing on this one adventure. A Treaty of Blood runs 24 pages long. I recently ran this at GaryCon, and I kept it to a single 4-hour session, but I could see it stretching on to 2 sessions with some more cautious player groups. Like most Vaesen adventures, A Treaty of Blood kicks off with the players receiving a letter from someone who has an unusual problem. This time, it's a king, Knez Vlad X, who lives in a remote area of Transylvania, the Braunach Valley. This area used to be a booming center of trade, but centuries ago it was hit by an earthquake which sealed it off from the rest of Europe. No one goes there anymore. King Vlad's problem is simple. A beast is rampaging his lands. It's killed 2 people so far, and no matter how hard he has tried, he hasn't managed to find or kill it. And interestingly enough, decades ago, his forefather, another Vlad, also called upon the Players' Society for help stopping another terrible creature. This one was a Dhampir, a half-man, half-vampire, and that expedition ended in tragedy with someone killed, but he needs the Society's help yet again, since he learned about that expedition and thinks the Players' Society knows what they're doing when it comes to hunting down evil creatures. I actually expanded the opening here a little bit. I mentioned that the oldest members of the Pravda Society, that's the Players' Society that investigates the Vaesen, absolutely wanted nothing to do with this mission. They told the players that. They said, "We are not going to get involved. This is for younger people only," and they sent them out to go handle it. I played them as a little suspicious, like they knew that there was bad news in this valley, and they knew the history of what had happened on that last expedition, but there was no way they were going to talk about it. This just really helps to play up the paranoia and show the difference between the younger generation of players and that old wizened generation in the Pravda Society that knows a lot more about what's going on, but they're just unwilling to share it. Now, at this point, after reading this letter, everyone at your table is probably thinking that King Vlad, who lives all by himself in faraway Transylvania, is a vampire. Well, this would be incredibly on the nose, especially for a Vaesen adventure, which is known for having complexities, so there's no way that he's actually a vampire.
That's right. I, Vlad, am no mere vampire. I am a vampire king, a Knez of the Valley, who rules over the land and takes care of his children and his people. Calling me a mere vampire? Well, that is insulting.
Okay, yeah, he's a vampire. This is one of the unusual Vaesen adventures where the player's suspicions early on will be 100% correct. But that's okay, because what's going on in his kingdom is actually pretty complicated. So let's do a little history lesson. Vlad was turned into a vampire about 5 centuries ago, when he fought a Varkolak, a horribly powerful wolf creature who is obsessed with killing people and then eating the moon. He was a mere warrior at the time. He fought the Varkolak heroically, but he couldn't kill it, even as the Varkolak was wiping out a lot of the king's men. But Vlad was able to drag the creature into the dungeons of the castle and imprison it. Unfortunately, Vlad was wounded by the thing, and shortly after being declared king for his bravery, he died and returned as a vampire. But Vlad had sworn to protect the Bralnik Valley after the creature's attack, and he took his oath seriously. So for the next 500 years, Vlad ruled and ruled well. He pretended to die every few decades and replace himself with his son, another Vlad. He adopted children from the village every so often, which he treated well, although he did feed off of them to sate his bloodthirst. But he never actually killed anybody, he just fed off of them, and again, he treated his people well and took that oath seriously. And over the years, he kept trying to kill the Varkolak that was imprisoned in his dungeon, but he just couldn't. The thing was too powerful, he could never figure out how to actually get rid of it. One day, Vlad fell in love with a mortal woman in the village, Maria, but her parents wouldn't allow him to marry her. But the Varkolak, in what I can only picture as a conversation between two frenemies one night, suggested that if Vlad let him out, well, he'd kill Maria's parents, and then Vlad could come swooping in and save the day like a hero and win Maria's heart with the parents out of the way. Vlad stupidly agreed to this, and this is exactly what happened.
Ah, Maria, it is I, Vlad, here to save you and your parents, but... Oh, I see they're dead already. That's too bad. How unexpected. I guess I was too late. Well, why don't we go back to the castle, you and I, and we'll get married. I'm sure they'd be okay with it.
So Maria's parents were dead, and Vlad proposed to her. And the Varkolak, who thought he'd be able to escape during the commotion, was again dragged back into the dungeon and imprisoned. He was strong, but weak from his years of imprisonment to actually escape Vlad. Prior to the official wedding, however, Maria stumbled upon the Varkolak in his dungeon cell. And the Varkolak told her what Vlad had done to win her heart. She was enraged, felt betrayed, and she fled the valley. But soon after, she gave birth to a daughter, Eve, who was herself half vampire. Concerned for her daughter Eve, and knowing that she'd eventually die and become a full vampire, Maria decided to eventually come back to the valley, now armed with decades of occult lore that she had studied in her travels. She used a spindle and some of the Varkolak's hair to form a bond with the creature, one that strengthened it and allowed it to break loose from the dungeon. And now Maria uses the spindle to control it and wants to gain more and more power with it by killing villagers so that it can take on and kill King Vlad, a revenge scheme, and then put her daughter on the throne. This is a complicated plan, but that's why you don't kill your girlfriend's parents in Transylvania. Okay, so that was a lot of history, but that's what makes Vaesen Adventures so much more interesting and horrific. The players have to figure out all of this backstory out, connect it together, because if they don't, that Varkolak is going to get too powerful, kill a lot of people, and I mean this literally, eat the moon, plunging the valley into darkness. So I like that this adventure has a clear goal and a real time limit for the players to move against. When the PCs finally trek across the world and end up in the Bralnik Valley, they'll find King Vlad to be a good host. Vlad is surrounded by his many adopted children who are also well-mannered and helpful. There are really two areas for the players to explore in the valley: Vlad's castle and the nearby village. And the PCs will go back and forth between these locations to figure out the situation. The castle has the most secrets to unveil. There's a library that has critical information on the Varkolak, so the PC's opponent will be revealed very early on with a little bit of study. I do wish the adventure had included a handout to tell the players more about Varkolaks. It suggests that you use another book, the art book, The Undead, for this, but I think most GMs probably don't want to spend more money for just one moment in the game, So I made my own handout, which you can download on my website, that gives the players a little bit of the mythology on the Varkalak. You can look in the link in the description below to find it. Also in the library is more information on what happened to the Society's last visit here, which paints King Vlad as somebody that nobody trusted. The PCs can also eventually find the dungeon in the castle, which has evidence that something large and unnatural was kept in it. This is the smoking gun that Vlad is involved somehow with the murders in the countryside. As a GM, however, you don't want to make tromping into the castle's dungeons the obvious thing to do. You really want the players to learn that there might be something in the dungeon a little bit later, maybe once they've learned the story about how Vlad I, centuries ago, imprisoned the Varkalak there, which they can find out that information from either in town, when they talk to people and hear the history, or they can actually research more in the library and find that story. But just don't give them the dungeon right away, or otherwise the mystery kind of unveils itself a little bit too soon. The village is making preparations for a festival that celebrates the defeat of the first creature centuries ago. And recently arrived to the village is the Wallachia Mystique Extravaganza, a carnival of sorts that Vlad invited to relieve the tension in the village from the murders. Among the carnival performers is Maria, the old girlfriend of Vlad, and her half-vampire Dampier daughter, Eve. Maria and Eve are both there to incite unrest, challenge the villagers that they should not rely on tradition and King Vlad anymore to protect themselves. They're there to cause some unrest and societal upheaval, which starts to cause friction, of course, between the villagers, them, and Vlad, and the priest who's on Vlad's side. It becomes very tense very fast. The countdown clock in this adventure is based around this social tension. Every day that goes past, the villagers get more and more unhappy. They'll eventually set out after the Varkalak themselves, only to become victims of its ferocity. They'll challenge that priest who was an avid defender of Vlad and turn their back on the church. And eventually, at the height of their celebration, Vlad will march down, and Maria plans to unleash both the Varkalak and the unruly peasants to destroy him. But Vlad himself is sort of unaware of all of this. He doesn't spend much time in the village, and he's just above it all. He simply wants to retain peace in the old ways and keep everybody safe and drag the Varkalak back into the dungeon. He authentically needs help stopping the Varkalak. He can't find it, and he's probably a little suspicious that it's become too powerful for him. And while Vlad holds his secrets, he fesses up to them pretty fast. Even if the players accuse Vlad of being a vampire right away, he'll actually relent and admit it. He never denies what he is, but he maintains that he's one of the good guys, the only man keeping the village from dissolution from both the beast and modernity. Without him, the village will die off, and he's right, it will. Playing Vlad correctly is really the secret to this whole adventure. If you play him as evil, the players just won't have a moral dilemma on their hands. They'll just turn into vampire hunter mode. But if you play him as too kind and grandfatherly, well, the reverse happens. The secret to playing Vlad is to make sure that he's always honest when asked for details, but he always leaves details out of his story. This is really important. He gives you two truths and a lie. He's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's wise and friendly, but man, he's really bad at revealing the whole truth that would be helpful to the players.
Well, when I told you that I knew little of the dungeon, that was true, because I only went down there twice a year. Versus the cows that we fed the Varkalak, well, they were there every day, so what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
So when I ran this adventure, I made sure that the players didn't entirely trust Vlad, even when he was being truthful, because it was inevitable that they would just find another lie or mistruth just around the corner. Yes, he admits he did free the Varkalak. Oh no, he didn't ask it to kill anyone. It was just there to scare Maria's family. Well, yes, it did kill people, and maybe I did imply that that's what the Varkalak would do, but it was an accident. The Varkalak broke his promise and not to hurt anybody. Just always with Vlad, stop just short of the full truth, and your players will naturally have this very ambiguous reaction to him, and that's the magic of this adventure. Eventually, by talking to the carnival performers, the innkeeper, the priest in the village, Vlad, the players will unravel the mystery and they'll discover that Maria once lived in this valley. They'll find her old house, now mostly destroyed and abandoned, and inside they'll find a spinning wheel missing the spindle that controls the Varkalak. It's kept in Maria's carnival wagon, or on her when she's using it. And the spindle, of course, is the secret to stopping the Varkalak. If the PCs can get it from Maria, the Varkalak will be uncontrollable, but less powerful and able to be defeated. And that's a tough challenge. Varkalaks are some of the most tough and powerful of Vaesen's creatures. This is a rare adventure where the players will need to be well armed and defeat the Vaesen at the end. So be sure to provide the investigators with enough revolvers and pistols and stakes to actually have a chance against it. Have those peasants provide arms if the players didn't come equipped with them. If the PCs don't stop the Varkalak fast enough, however, he'll kill enough victims to eventually become too powerful for even Maria to control. He'll break her spell, leap into the sky, and take a bite out of the moon, which plunges the land into darkness and chaos and insanity and death and just overwhelm everybody. This leaves the village ruined, the PC's only hope of survival fleeing the valley forever. It's a pretty dramatic and apocalyptic ending if the players don't move fast. The adventure actually doesn't have a lot of hints for the players that that's the inevitable outcome here if the Varkalak keeps killing, so you may want to have Vlad, once the players have mostly figured out the mystery, inform the players, like write them a letter or talk to them and say, hey, if we don't stop this thing imminently, it will tear the moon out of the sky and all will be lost. The more pressure you can add to the players on that, the better the adventure will be in that last half hour of it. But even with the Varkalak defeated, not all here is won. The PCs no doubt have influenced the villagers' opinion of the world. So do they overthrow Vlad and declare his daughter Eve their new leader? Well, that may sound great, but the village is actually doomed without Vlad's business sense and his money and his coffers and his empire of children he's sent out over the years that's keeping the village afloat. Plus, Eve will actually eventually become a full vampire, hungry, looking for victims, and the cycle begins anew. Or do they leave Vlad on the throne and chase Maria and Eve out of the valley, knowing that then the cursed cycle of this valley will continue forever? Like a lot of Vaesen adventures, there's no outright win condition here. The PC's actions will dictate the future of this valley, but that future will be very, very gray no matter what happens. When I ran this at GaryCon, my players debated constantly what to do until the very last moment. When Maria finally confronted Vlad and sicked the Varkalak on him, they actually stood back and let the Varkalak take out King Vlad, but man, you could tell they were unhappy with that outcome. And then they quickly confiscated the spindle from Maria and defeated the Varkalak before it gained too much power. So it was incredibly close. They did stop it from eating the moon. One player was near death. Another one was very wounded. It was a pretty epic climax. So that's a Treaty of Blood. So what do I think? First, I'll say that this is a complex adventure to run. You have a critical NPC, King Vlad, who has to be portrayed really, really well for this adventure to work. And then you have not one, but two countdown clocks to deal with. The villagers' unrest and the Varkalak's insatiable hunger. And the Varkalak is so powerful as a creature and opponent, you have to use him just right, or else he'll kill the party pretty quickly. And you also have to keep a lot of timelines in your head just right. When did Vlad become king? When did he marry Maria? When was the Varkalak freed? When did the society visit to take care of that first Dampier years ago? Players will actually want all of these details as they investigate to piece the story together. So I actually recommend you sketch out a little timeline to keep this all straight. Vaesen's a little fuzzy with dates, which is fine, but players are going to want to know approximately the order in which all that happened. You can steal my own timeline that I created for this adventure on my website, oneshotadventures.com. Check the link in the description below. And then you have a ton of additional NPCs. Maria, Eve, the town priest, the innkeeper, 6 children of Vlad who have different personalities and guard the various parts of the castle. The good news is if the players get stuck in this investigation, you have all these NPCs to push and pull the players to all the different locations and reveal some knowledge that maybe they missed, and that's great. But you do have to naturally entwine them all in the adventure. For example, when I ran it, I had one of the kids beg the PCs to sneak them out of the castle so they could see the celebration early. This won the kid's trust by negotiating with the kid, who later on would agree to let them into the locked dungeon. This felt very natural, but that was something that I created because I knew that otherwise the players wouldn't really have a great way of getting in there. You just have to create these little moments early on to pay off later. So you can see how that's a lot for a GM to juggle. So I'll just say, don't run this adventure if you're a newer GM of investigative horror games. You really have to know the adventure and its characters well. You have to know how to adjust the pacing appropriately. But if you are an experienced GM and you've run lots of Vaesen adventures or Call of Cthulhu adventures, this is a really strong adventure. It's built on such an original and fascinating dark history. I love the backstory and how it intertwines with the present. I like that it's subversive and that it leans into what players expect, but then flips everything on its head and then puts players in surprising situations. And this whole thing just feels like Carpathia. You just can't take this adventure and set it anywhere else. I love that it has so much atmosphere, from the frozen wilderness, the description of the townspeople, the relationship, political and societal, between Vlad and the villagers. It just really separates itself out in feel from other Vaesen adventures. And there's so much for the players to do. They can roleplay with so many great fleshed out characters. They can sneak through a decrepit old castle at night looking for the dungeons. They can leap onto the table, draw their sword, and accuse their host of being a vampire and hoping they live to survive that. They can join villagers in a dangerous hunt in the frozen wild, explore old graveyards, research old names. Basically, anything you'd expect in a horror game is in here. All play styles work. Role players will love this adventure as much as the gamers who just want to hide out in the church tower with a sniper rifle and a stake ready to go. And the moral tug-of-war that plays out at the end, I think, is just fantastic. While not all players are going to like a no-win situation, the end, no matter which one it is, will leave your players feeling a little unsettled, like they could have just done more. And while this may be a bit unsatisfying as people leave the table, it feels horrific and sad all at once. And that's a marvelous thing for a horror adventure to do. If you've played or run in Treaty of Blood, let me know in the comments below how it went. I'd love to know how your adventure ended. And don't forget, if you want to use all the extra assets I created for this adventure, check the description for a link. And unless you want to be the victim of a hungry wolf monster, you better grab a spindle and hit those like and subscribe buttons, because it's the only way from keeping the Varkalax from eating the moon. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if your host's name is Vlad, he only drinks wine, and you don't see him during the day, quit overthinking things. He's a vampire. Definitely a vampire.